What's your creepy paranormal driving at night story? I used to work late nights at a cafe years ago, and my family lives in the middle of nowhere in the country. One night I was driving home, about 1 a.m., and I noticed something keeping pace with my car outside my window. I glanced over and saw what looked like a pair of eyes. I looked back forward, and there was something standing in the middle of the road ahead of me. I couldn't make out what it was and assumed it was a deer, so I slammed on my brakes. As I skidded closer, it looked like a massive shadowy figure with huge wings, and it sprinted off the side of the road insanely fast on what looked like human-like legs. I just sat in the road for a minute and called everyone I knew to freak the flurbo out. I finished the drive home and told my mom about it, and she swore up and down it was the Mothman warning us about something, but I just wrote it off. 2 days later, a close friend of the family committed self-ending, and it devastated the whole town, very small town where everyone knows everyone. I told some other people close to us about it, and apparently, other people had seen something like this in that area too. It's safe to say, I've never driven down that road again. My grandpa was a trucker for a long time, and one of his stories goes like this. In the 1970s, 1978 I believe, he was hauling some canned goods from Texas to California. And about 1 a.m., in the middle of bum-flurbo nowhere, Arizona, as he so eloquently puts it, he sees in his rear view mirror a truck approaching fast. As it gets closer, he realizes it's a 1940s Peterbilt with an old reefer trailer, doing about 100 mph, flames out the stack, sparks out the wheels, and making a sound that sounds like the world is ending. He slows down to let the guy pass, and the Peterbilt gets alongside him. My grandpa looks at the driver, and he said that the driver had no jaw and black eyes. The Peterbilt then swerved and hits his truck, sending him into the ditch, and thankfully he just slid in. After gathering his nerves and wits, he gets out to inspect the damage, and his driver's side cowl, wheel arch, and fuel tank have all had heavy damage to them, along with burn marks. It still rattles him to this day. He hates talking about it. This is also a man who wrestled rattlesnakes and worked on the oil fields before becoming a trucker, so he wasn't the one to scare easily. Let me preface by saying, I do not believe in the supernatural, especially ghosts, and I just think it's amazing what your brain can convince you of, given the right circumstances. My brain misfired is the only way I can explain this. Anyway. I used to have about an hour-long commute home through a very rural area. One particular evening, part of the main road I always took was closed, so there was a detour down a one-lane gravel road. The last stretch before you reach the highway again is perfectly straight, and there is nothing but perfectly flat fields on either side of the road for the better part of a mile. Also, this road isn't really elevated above the level of the fields on either side. And the fields were empty at that time. Flat. It wasn't completely dark yet, but very nearly clear sky, and it was a dead still night. I was about to start slowing down when I saw something to the left side of the road coming toward the road. It looked wispy, and I couldn't quite make out what it was. Then it seemed to jump in a smooth arc, straight over the roadway, maybe a foot or two high, and the only way I can describe it is, it looked like a ghost fox. Like it wasn't solid and left sort of a smoky trail behind it. I stopped immediately and looked out to the right in the direction it had gone, and there was nothing. I can still see it in my mind, clear as day. I think it must have been just the perfect storm for me to have a mild hallucination. Only thing I can figure. Just a random thing that happened in my brain. My first thought afterward was a piece of clear plastic blowing in the wind, and my brain distorted it, but there was no wind, and there was nothing there immediately after. Also, it didn't happen that fast, and I had a moment to take it in, and ghost fox. That's what I saw. I don't believe that's what it was. Driving home from dinner with my ex-wife. We took an off-road path on accident because I made a wrong turn. Figured I'd keep going because we were heading east, and that was our destination anyway. Creepy dark road with some corn fields on the sides. Suddenly my ex-wife says, "What's that?" Me. "What?" Her. "There, up ahead on the side of the road, is that a person?" Now I have perfectly fine eyes and so did she, but I didn't see a darn thing. Me. "I don't see anything." At this point, she turns to me looking angry and says, "Stop fleabing with me." "Look." Me, irritated. "I don't see anything." She looked at me confused and horrified like I've never seen her before, and then looks back at the figure and says, "WTF, it's a man with a briefcase and a hat." Now I got a bit worried since the look on her face was way too genuine and spooked to be a stupid prank. So we get closer and I still don't see a thing, and she turned quiet as her head started turning as we came up to this man I did not see. So I stick my neck out and turned on and off the bigger lights in the car to see what the heck she was seeing. Nothing. I see absolutely nothing but corn and a road. So we pass by this man, she turns white and starts whimpering, and she basically begs me, please tell me you saw that, I'm freaking out, please please. Again, I tell her, calm down, I really didn't see anything. What is wrong with you? I then peek next to her to view my mirror, and I don't know how or why or whatever, but there he was. For just half a second, I saw a man standing at the side of the road, all in black and a hat on. I couldn't see the briefcase, but I am 100% sure I saw him standing there looking at me through the mirror as he went out of the mirror's reflection. So I froze for a second and then quickly looked out the back window, nothing. My ex-wife knew I saw it too. OMG, you just saw it too. I told you I saw it. Please drive, go. My dad was a trucker for a few years in the 80s before becoming a firefighter. There is a very small town in Oklahoma called Fairfax that he frequently traveled to carrying oil field supplies. The highway to the town is a paved 2-lane highway that cuts through the open wheat fields of Pawnee and Osage counties. Very quiet. He was traveling around midnight one night north on Highway 18 en route to Fairfax when he said he rounded a curve and his headlights illuminated a man in a wheelchair pushing himself down the middle of the road. Dad said it was extremely foggy, and had he been distracted at all, he likely never would have seen the man and run over him. He swerved into the opposite lane, narrowly missing the man. Once he felt he passed him, he pulled over and looked for the man to offer help but never saw him. Dad continued to Fairfax and joined another trucker at a stop. He said the trucker had been a few miles ahead of him on the highway and was wide-eyed in shock. Dad asked him if he saw the same thing, to which the trucker said, I thought I had seen a ghost. Dad said they contacted a deputy in the area who told them it was a common sighting for truckers. He had no further explanations about who the man was or why he would be going down the highway at night. He told them he would always go check, but never located the man. Not a truck driver, but I frequently travel long distances overnight and early in the morning. I live in Texas and recently, it's been very foggy in the morning, around 4 to 5 a.m. Dense fog that limits vision to about 25 feet or so you really have to be careful driving. There's a stretch of road that connects two neighboring towns, and it's got maybe 4 streetlights on the whole 4 miles. So I'm tootling along and out of the corner of my eye, I see under a streetlight this silhouette, about human-sized, just standing there. Now there's a huge population of homeless people in both of the towns, but usually they all congregate at the local shelter or wherever they can find a good place to sleep. I wasn't too off-put by this, but it did spook me a little. Well, up ahead is one more streetlight before the road ends. In the fog, I couldn't see that well, but as I drove right by the streetlight, at around 25 miles per hour, limited visibility, large deer in the area, another figure just sort of appeared under the light. It was another silhouette and I couldn't see what it was exactly, but it freaked me out. I checked my rear view mirror and it wasn't there. I drove the rest of the way muttering to myself and nervously laughing, trying to calm my own nerves. I was in Wyoming just outside of a little town called Sheridan coming back home from New Mexico with my wife at the time. It was about 3 in the morning when a huge dog-like animal ran across the highway. Normally, animals running across the road are not so strange in that area, except this thing was very big and long. It only took a few strides to get across the entire highway. It looked like it was made of human skin with a long dog-like face like that Egyptian god Anubis. It had a short mane like a lion, but the most distinctive attribute that haunts me till this day is the long deformed human back legs with giant human-like feet. Nothing like a mountain lion or wolf. My wife and I were in shock as she also saw the animal, looked at me, and before I could let it out, said, "Did that thing have human legs?" A part of me wishes I could see it again. Another part of me hopes I never do. This might get buried, but this story always creeps me out. My dad's friends, they weren't really long-haul truckers, but they were thieves and had just robbed a safe from somewhere in the UK. This must have been back in 70s or 80s. They were using a van to carry the safe, and it was around 3 a.m. in the morning when they decided to stop somewhere and have a rest and a cigarette. Anyway, as they were parked up on a quiet main road, they could hear the clip-clop of a woman's high heels. They thought it was odd, seeing as it was early hours of the morning with no one else around. The sound stood out. What would a woman be doing out here at this hour on her own? They looked in the wing mirror, and sure enough, they saw what appeared to be a woman walking towards the van. They looked at each other puzzled and waited for her to approach the window, which was already rolled down. My dad's friend would be deeply uncomfortable by this point in telling the story. As she approached and they looked at the woman, they said they were sure it was actually the devil. It was a being with a razor-sharp smile from ear to ear and the most evil look in the eyes. My dad's friend yelled to the one driving, "Fleabing drive," and they just sped off. They said in hindsight, they weren't sure if it was heels they heard or hooves. My dad's friends weren't ones for making up stories either, and this was one of the only experiences they had like this, and they swore it was real. Taking a load of lumber in central Wisconsin about an hour away from I-94. I am a flatbed driver, so I usually don't drive at night, but tonight, I had to. It was roughly midnight, and I was approaching an intersection of two county highways. At the intersection, I thought I saw a woman in a sundress and a little girl holding her hand. They were in the center of the road staring in my direction. I honked my air horn because sometimes kids play chicken with vehicles, and 80 pounds of semi would annihilate any flesh I hit. As I got closer, I blinked and they were gone. As I rolled through the intersection, I felt the strangest coldness travel down my back, windows were up, and I swore I heard someone whisper "why" into my ear. I floored the gas and got the flurbo out of Dodge on that one. I've experienced a few paranormal activities and that one was the most scary,